Resident Evil 4 Remake is the newest Resident Evil game and the 4th remake that they have done. All of these remakes are really well done, remakes 2 to 4 all being with the new horror action style, although some of these are much better than others. Now there will be some spoilers in this for Resident Evil 4 as well as some other Resident Evil games, but more importantly, this is coming from the perspective of someone who has actually never played the original Resident Evil 4. That said, I do have some knowledge on Resident Evil 4, but I have never played it firsthand, but I won't exactly know the differences of what's missing or what's changed, nor do I have nostalgia glasses on for this game. So how does Resident Evil 4 Remake stack up with the other remakes? Is it a masterpiece like Resident Evil 2 was, or is it a quick flash in the pan like Resident Evil 3 was? Sorry Jill, they really just did you dirty. The over-the-shoulder style that they've been doing in these remakes, I think just feels simply amazing. I actually think I much prefer this third-person perspective to the first-person style that they use in 7 and 8, although the first-person view can make the horror elements a bit more impactful. And while Resident Evil 4 Remake does seemingly add much more horror elements to this game, similar to what they did in 2 and 3,
what the fuck?
Nothing still comes close to House Buenavito in Resident Evil Village. Anyone who knows, knows. Now this remake was interesting to me because the original Resident Evil 4 was the first Resident Evil game to pivot the franchise into this action-based style. And this is a direction the franchise kept doubling down on until Resident Evil 7, where they thankfully brought back the horror elements in a very good way.
Welcome to the family, son.
I think this remake does a really good job of balancing this horror and action together, just as the remakes of 2 and 3 have. Now the gunplay in Resident Evil 4 works amazingly well. With Leon taking some kung fu classes, he is now kicking and parrying attacks, which just adds a great level of engagement added on to the already good gunplay. The knife also feels way more useful now. I always felt the knife was kind of a throwaway thing. Now with the parries, the stealth kills, and turning yourself into a stab bot, just feels so much more useful than just being a tool to get things off you or check to make sure enemies are actually dead. That said, the degradation of the knife is kind of annoying, but I think it helps bring the classic feel of resource management that Resident Evil games were once known for. As now once you use the knife or your body armor takes too many hits, you have to pay the shopkeeper in order to get them repaired. Speaking of the shopkeeper, I see where everybody loves this guy so much. He's a super fun and interesting character, and he's just quite frankly charming. And his shooting gallery is a super fun change to the pace of the game, bringing in bright colors and just fun arcadey aesthetics. It actually gave me a little bit of a nostalgic feel, like the N64 Ocarina of Time shooting gallery. I was also pleasantly surprised by the enemy variety in this game. Resident Evil games always give you the zombies, or in this case the ganado, but they kind of evolve with you as this game goes on. At first they start as farmers and villagers with pitchforks and torches, but as you go through the game they start slowly getting dynamite and molotovs. Eventually you even get to the castle and start encountering the medieval variety, which uses maces and crossbows, and eventually when you get to the industrial area they start having stun batons, riot shields, and snipers. This really works as a great way to theme the environments and makes them feel way more immersive. The lichens of Resident Evil 8 always kind of felt the same even though you were in different areas. There's also a handful of different enemy types as well.
You are really slacking on your pest control.
Like, the dogs really startled me the first time I saw them.
Oh, you're kidding me.
The regenerators, however, take the cake. They put this feeling of dread in me whenever I encountered them. I also really liked how you had to read some journals and use special tactics and gear to try to figure out how to properly take them down. This is similar to how in the original games you would find out that acid would melt the liquor betas.
Jesus, cuddly bastard.
With that call out though, I feel like RE4 lacks the fire and acid mechanics, and they do actually feel missed in my opinion. The only time you really get fire is through elemental traps or shooting enemy Molotovs, but the acid is just completely gone. Yeah, the flashbangs have some special properties with the parasites, but it just feels like there's an extra element missing. Maybe this is something they're going to try to put into Ada Wong's DLC down the line, which I'll talk about that later. Now you do encounter a lot of fun themed areas in RE4 Remake, but I feel like some of them were extremely similar to Resident Evil 8. And yeah, I get it, 4 technically came out first, so 8 really stole it from 4, but you get the village, the castle, the swamp, and the industrial area. With these, however, I feel like Castle Dimitrescu was way better, as well as Heisenberg's factory. The village areas were actually pretty comparable in my opinion, and the swamp in 4 was way better, but the swamp was the weakest area in Resident Evil 8 by far. And while I'm still comparing Resident Evil 8 to Resident Evil 4, I want to bring up the bosses. The bosses in Resident Evil 8 felt like big characters. You had Lady Dimitrescu and Heisenberg, who felt really strong and impactful because when you first meet them, they feel like these larger-than-life threats, and you're just wondering how in the world are you going to defeat them as poor little Ethan. feel like this build-up was much weaker in Resident Evil 4. You had it a little bit with Mendez and Salazar, but it just didn't hit the same level in my opinion. It also seemed like they wanted Mendez to be this almost Mr. X or Nemesis type threat, but he really ever only pursues you at one part briefly. And most of the interactions you have with him are via cutscenes, and he never really just busts through a wall like Mr. X, making you drop a fresh load in your pants, or he never makes you go, oh fiddlesticks, not the hentai monster again, just like Nemesis does. And you do have some fun interactions with Salazar, but I feel like he just needed a little bit more. I feel like if Salazar was like talking smack to you while you're in the black water room, that would have just added a little extra layer to his personality. As for the other main bosses like Krauser and Sadler, Krauser felt kind of random and disjointed coming into the mix. Krauser was supposed to have this deep personal connection to Leon, but for some reason I just didn't feel it. Maybe that's a personal thing with me. Sadler, while also being the big final bad guy, I didn't feel any personal connection to stop him either, other than this is the big bad guy, we gotta put him down. I do like how Leon kind of shoots at him at first though.
Tell someone who gives a shit.
With that said, I actually did really enjoy a lot of the mini-bosses in this game, and I do feel like they didn't have any duds in this game at all when it came to the gameplay fights of bosses. Unlike how Resident Evil 8, the Mario fight just kind of fell flat. A lot of these mini-bosses I found to be super fun, like how when you fight the giant, if you help the wolf bro out, he could come and help you out in the fight.
Hey, it's that dog.
When you do the fire pit fight with Luis and you can just drop them in there, and the same with the blind Wolverines, like how you use sound and you shoot the bells to make them react differently. I just thought all these were pretty cool and unique mechanics to add on. And while Krauser's addition to the story did feel a little disjointed to me, I actually enjoyed his boss fights the most, I would say. I loved how some of them were knife fights, even after he changed. Let me know in the comments below which boss you think had the best encounter. So one of the gimmicks Resident Evil 4 has in both the original and the remake is transporting around Baby Eagle, aka Ashley. And I've heard very mixed things about how she was received in the original game. However, in this game, I honestly didn't mind her too much and didn't find her to be a nuisance that much at all.
That went well.
I actually kind of enjoyed the relationship her and Leon started to share.
You can't run. You gotta keep moving forward.
I do feel like she was a little underused though, because all you really use her for is to solve puzzles and open doors, and they even start joking about becoming partners, and I thought she would evolve a little bit more.
You can. Just give me a heads up before you stab me next time, okay?
I mean, the best example I can think of for having a support character like her is Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite. I was really hoping Ashley would develop somewhat like she did, eventually tossing you ammo, maybe giving you random supplies she scavenged, finding you subscribers, and even lending a hand once in a while, but unfortunately Ashley just never develops in this way. Even after her solo segment, which, while simple, I did feel was pretty well done, I feel like it would have been cool if she actually kept the lantern, allowing her to possibly stun enemies, giving you a free kick, or just all sorts of stuff could be based around it. And although it's a bit of a minor thing, I feel like Ashley should have been the one to give you the rocket launcher at the end instead of Ada. It just would have felt a little more impactful in my opinion. Speaking of Ada, there's a lot of hate buzzing around about how her voice acting was so terrible. Ooh, Ada.
Kind you like. Now where's the amber?
Why does she sound like that? And yeah, it's not the best, and it does feel a little flat and like the actors didn't want to be there, but people harassing her for it in real life, it's kind of pathetic.
Not a bad move. Very smooth.
Now my understanding of the original Resident Evil 4 is that they had an Ada story path, which I would imagine they're probably holding off for DLC, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I hope it'll be worth it in the end and they end up spicing up the game in new ways, maybe adding the things like acid elements and fire elements, and even help to flesh out Salazar and Sadler a little bit more, kind of give more information to the Wesker tie-in. It also seems kind of weird to me that we didn't get mercenaries from the get-go. I mean, it's going to be a free update coming soon, but it's just odd it wasn't packaged in right away. Despite this though, I think Resident Evil 4 Remake is one of the best Resident Evil games out currently, even out during Resident Evil 7 and Village respectively. I even think it takes Resident Evil 2 Remake out by just a hair.
You like thrill rides? You're gonna love this.
I want to rate Resident Evil 4 really high, but I had noticed lately I've been rating games really high, so I'm trying to recalibrate my system a little bit. That said, I'm going to give this game an 8.7. Yeah, the puzzles were a little weak, and the bosses I feel could have had a bit better build up, but it doesn't take away from the game at all, and it makes up for everything else in spades by outdoing itself in every single other category.
And that's the game!
So now I'm super curious on where they're going to go from here. Are they going to remake RE5? I feel with the Wesker tie-in, they kind of have to now, right? 5 was almost pure action, so if they tone up some of the horror elements and keep the cheese at respectable levels while keeping it quirky like they did with Resident Evil 4 Remake, and keeping in that awesome co-op, I think Resident Evil 5 could be really amazing. And hopefully they take off that nasty green filter. I never actually played Resident Evil 6, but I know it brings the cast together in kind of a uniform story, and a remake of that could be interesting, but I do know Resident Evil 6 apparently needs a lot of work because that's ranked super poorly in the Resident Evil franchise. I also wonder if they have thoughts of remaking Resident Evil 1 in this third-person over-the-shoulder style. I'm not sure how well that would work though, as when you're in a third-person style, you need kind of bigger, broader areas, and the mansion is such a small, confined location.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
But they did make this work with the Raccoon City Police Department in 2. We also know the story is going to continue past Resident Evil 8, most likely having Rose become the new main character, but they were teasing in 4 Remake that Ashley wanted to become an agent just like Leon. I'm wondering if it's possible in the future we could see Ashley and Rose working together as the new agents, possibly even having Ashley be the senior to Rose and having her guide her. Overall though, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Let me know in the comments below what you think when it comes to Ashley and Rose in the future. But this does make me super excited to see where this franchise is going, and I'm super glad I got back into the series with Resident Evil 7, and I'm really looking forward to see what they put out next.
Come on. Let's go home.